So thank you very much, everybody. I think we are already relaxed, and I'm very happy that you are already enjoying this beautiful setting of this JSPS core-to-core program on the Antarctic governance research, the 6th Kobe PCRC Antarctic Public Symposium, achievements in Hiroshima, and remaining challenges for the Incheon ATCM. So welcome. Thank you very much for coming to this island, to Awaji Island, with a lot of history to it, and I hope you can explore those histories attached to this island itself. And also, please enjoy the magnificent architecture by the famous Japanese architect Ando Tadao, and everything is designed and built by himself. So enjoy that also during the 2 days meetings. So the intention of this symposium is to have a mixture of participants. I think we have around 55 registered participants, and around 20 are from the Hiroshima ATCM, and other 20 are the experts coming for this symposium, and most of them are actually going to the Kobe workshop afterwards, so more like academic, but I know that there is a number of participants who have an experience in the, yes, so Bill is there, so thank you very much. So there are some people who knows the ATCM, but so that's the mixture of those who did attend the Hiroshima ATCM and the others not. And also there's a mixture between delegates, officials, and the academia. And I thought this mixture would have a synergetic effect of deepening our thoughts, and maybe some critical analysis of the ATCM, and also for a more constructive insights into the future of the Antarctic governance. So that's the intention. So the sessions, except for this one, because the first plenary session is the panelists are all from ATCM, but all the other sessions, we have this mixture of those attending the ATCM and not, and academia and delegates. So thank you very much for that. And all the speakers, the panelists, and also maybe in the audience are experts, and they are speaking in their own personal capacities, except when the speakers themselves say otherwise. So basically, we are here as an experts and exchange views from their perspective. So with that welcome note, I hope you would enjoy the discussions, and I think all the chairs, I have actually designated the chairs in front for the chairs, all the chairs. So maybe, of course, later on you can come down to to sit in this first row, if you like, from tomorrow. But so hopefully that you can enjoy the constructive discussions during this symposium. But thank you for coming to the Awaji Yumebutai for this conference. Thank you. Okay, so we will start the first plenary session. What was that session title? The main achievements at the Hiroshima ATCM and reports. I'll give you some background to the issues that I hope I will be like promoting the panelists to speak. At the very beginning of the 48th ATCMs in Hiroshima, during the press conference with close to 100 accredited media journalists registered, with around 20 attending in person, Ambassador Uyama, as the chair of the meeting, identified 4 important areas of discussion and possible achievements. First, climate change and its implications for Antarctica, and including the protection of the emperor penguins. Second, the consultative party status regarding the requests received from Canada, Belarus, and Turkey. Third, promoting transparency of the Antarctic activities, including the improvements of information exchange. And fourth, the effective management of Antarctic tourism. So those are the 4 areas that the chair has identified at the very beginning of the ATCM. And yesterday, I should have put the QR code up on the screen, but yesterday the host country communique is released, both at the ministry's website and the Antarctic Treaty Secretariat website. And also, all meeting documents from Hiroshima ATCM are also publicly available on the Secretariat website, according to the rules of procedure of the meeting, unless any consultative party has objected to it. So I haven't gone through all the list, and there are any ones or twos which are not publicly available. I haven't gone through that, but I think all the documents are already publicly available. And there was the second press conference by the Ambassador Aoyama, the chair, also attended by many media on the closure of the ATCM. So that's yesterday, 21st of May. And also answering questions posed by the journalist, and explained, in addition to the information that we have in the communique, rather in detail, what happened in the meeting. Particularly as to the emperor penguins and the consultative party status, because those are the areas that the journalists posed the question to the ambassador. So in addition to the communique, it was made clear that the emperor penguins Antarctic specially protected species designation was not possible because of the objection of China and Russia. So actually he named those 2 countries in his press conference. And with regard to the consultative party status, he also mentioned that all 3 requests have not been achieved. And Belarus and with regard to Canada, the ambassador mentioned it was an objection from Russia and China. And with regard to Turkey, an objection from India. So that is already open for the information that we can, this panelists can base our discussions. So that's where we are. And hopefully that we can delve a little bit further into some of the working groups and the workshops that we have had at the ATCM. So we have Mr. Nils Vanstappen, co-convener of Joint CEP, Committee for Environmental Protection under the Madrid Protocol, SC-CAMLR, Scientific Committee of the Commission of the Antarctic Marine Living Resources, so CEP SC-CAMLR workshop on climate change and monitoring. And he is also the convener of the subsidiary group on climate change response. We call this SG-CCR. And also a member of the Belgian delegation to Hiroshima ATCM, and the legal and policy advisor at the Belgian Federal Environmental Administrations. So I would hope that we can have some information from Nils on the joint workshop, and maybe some discussions from the SG-CCR, both bodies based on the central role of climate change in ATCM's work, and assessment of the achievements at the Hiroshima ATCM CEP in this regard. So there are several students from Kobe, and they are required to produce reports coming from here. And so I'll be pinpointing some of the document numbers so that they can actually refer to them after hearing the discussions here. So there is a working paper, WP, working paper 55. This is submitted by Belgium. This is the report from the joint CEP SC-CAMLR workshop. And it provided conclusions in the form of list of 12 recommendations, which were acknowledged by the CEP, and that will guide its ongoing work in intersessional periods. But maybe for the people who are from the outside, it might be a little bit difficult how those recommendations would have the significant or added values to what you and the ATCM and the CEP members have been working on this particular area. And okay, yes. And also, there might be some questions from the audience. Why it is necessary in order to have this joint working between two treaty bodies? One, what we call the CAMLR, the Convention on the Conservation of Marine Living Resources, which is under the Antarctic Treaty System, but still a separate treaty, and the Antarctic Treaty and its Madrid Protocol, and how this harmonized and effective synergies between those two bodies, how it is important for the future of the Antarctic governance under the climate change. And also, I would mention for the students, there is a working paper 7. So this is the achievements coming from the intersessional work of the SC-CAMLR WP7, which were discussed at the Hiroshima. So maybe I can give to Nils how he summarizes the achievements from ATCM and the CEP in Hiroshima. Thank you, Nils.
Thank you. Thank you. That's loud. Thank you, Professor Shibata, and thank you for inviting me as well to join this panel. So I will try in my intervention here to focus on the issue of climate change, and particularly on the role CEP plays in its work on this topic. And it might be a bit weird, but given the discussions we've had over the past weeks, I would say let me start by a statement of fact. Climate change is a reality. It's affecting the Antarctic environment. And it is a bit weird that I have to say it, but that has been not always easy to convey to everyone on the floor. Just to say this is what the best available science is telling us. And SCAR plays an important role in providing us with this best available science. And I would refer everyone to their Antarctic Climate Change and the Environment report and the updates they annually do. I can't remember the name of the working paper, but just to cite one of the key messages from the most recent annual update is abrupt changes are already underway in the Antarctic region, with others on the verge of taking place. So just as a background, in 2023, the consultative parties reaffirmed their firm commitment to combat the adverse impacts of climate change in the Antarctica through the Helsinki Declaration, and also confirmed their worry about irreversible effects from climate change in more than 2 degrees Celsius scenarios. Again, today discussions on urgently addressing climate change in the Antarctic and outside the Antarctic have become increasingly difficult. But I still, and I'll come back to this later in my talk, I think there's still some progress being made despite some of these challenges to talk about this topic and to use those terms. Just for a bit of background, climate change has been on the agenda of the CEP for a long time, since 2009. And the CEP has had a climate change response work program since 2015. It's been updated most recently in 2024 to add the issue of sea ice change, which is an increasingly important issue, which I'll also come back to briefly later. In 2017, the subsidiary group on climate change response was established to facilitate the implementation of the SC-CCR. And so the SC-CCR is really an essential body to bring back different strands of work from different members in order to advance the work of the CEP on climate change. The SC-CCR, for its work, really depends on members and observers to take the lead on topics. The SC-CCR doesn't have its own means. They don't have their own observers or their own monitoring programs or their own scientists. So it's really up to members and observers to take up some of the work outlined in the CCRWP and move that forward. And so as SC-CCR convener, I can confirm that most of my work is trying to convince people to do work and then try to bring it back to the meeting. That also means that there's a bit of steering from the CEP on, and I'm sure Ceisha can confirm this afterwards, it's more generally an issue, there's a bit of steering through the CCRWP of what our priorities are, but it's also up to members to decide to pick up topics and work on them, present working papers on them. So the members also set the priorities themselves by deciding what they want to focus on. I'll not go into detail of what we did intersessionally over the last year, but Professor Shibata has already referred to working paper 7, but just to pick out 2 of the tasks we worked on over the past intersessional period, which are the climate vulnerable species and sea ice change. So climate vulnerable species is the idea under SC-CCR is not to only focus on the iconic species which merit attention, and as the emperor penguin, it's the seals, but also to focus on other species, mosses, microbial communities, and to start considering how these are vulnerable to climate change and to find a general approach that we can use for all kinds of different species. On sea ice change, this is a relatively new topic on CEP's agenda, and it's a topic of great urgency given the changes we've seen over the last couple of years. And so there's 2 strands of work there. We're trying to determine what we need to know in order to be able to act, and then we're trying to determine what kind of action would be needed. And so we did a lot of work on trying to determine what we need to know over the past intersessional period, and I'm hoping that over the coming intersessional period we'll get to work on what we need to do and how we need to act. And then to come back, another priority of the SC-CCR over the past intersessional period was to organize the joint workshop, which Professor Shibata just mentioned. This workshop took place just before the CEP. And again, we thank the Japanese hosts for all their support in organizing this workshop. Just to pick up on the questions you raised of why it is important that we have these joint workshops and think about joint collaboration, I'll just pick up on one of the recommendations from the workshop, which was to add the topic of cumulative impacts to the list of joint priority areas which both bodies deal with. And I think that's an important issue. There's a need for a holistic approach to the protection of the Antarctic environment and the conservation of Antarctic marine living resources, objectives which are quite similar in a sense. And that holistic approach is only possible if all bodies dealing with the issues are closely collaborating and closely working together. And that can be on a number of issues. We can jointly identify our science needs. We can exchange information on monitoring we're doing. We can see if we can coordinate on monitoring we are doing. So I think there's a lot of overlap, and there's the 5 joint priority areas already defined, and now a 6th added, but I'll try not to go into that too much because there's a session coming up later as well where I may go into that in a bit more detail, but I'm very much open to questions. We have 12 recommendations coming out of the workshop, detailed in working paper 55, from quite general recommendations, such as decision-making needs to keep pace with the speed of environmental change, over the need for long-term monitoring, to more concrete recommendations such as the establishment of a joint CEP SC-CAMLR scholarship. And just to conclude, let me pick up on the first general recommendation which I've mentioned and turn it into a question. Is our decision-making keeping up with the rapid speed of change? We have seen rain on the Antarctic Peninsula recently. sea ice extent is decreasing at an alarming rate. There's talk of abrupt changes and tipping points. And the message of, are we acting quickly enough, came through the number of working papers and information papers that were submitted to ATCM and CEP. We have made some progress over the last intersessional period and over the last years as well, trying to identify some of the drivers. I think we increasingly know more about the drivers, so from a scientific point of view, we're making good progress. So I think it is important to really start thinking about decision-making and how to move things forward. And so I'll say that if we want to keep up with changes, we probably need to speed up. And I think just to ask with a question to the audience, actually, if you have any brilliant suggestions or ideas on how to speed up the work, on how to speed up decision-making, on how to keep up with the rapid pace of environmental change, they would be very welcome. So I would be very happy to have a bit of a debate on that. And very open to any questions to any of these issues.
Good, thank you very much. My intention is to go each panelist first, around 10 minutes, and then we'll come back for the open discussions, maybe amongst the panelists and also with the audience. But of course, if you have a burning question for Nils, of course we can take it now, or maybe factual clarification, for example. Okay. If not, maybe we can go. And of course, your last like questions posed to the audience and to the panelists. I think we really need to think about that. Thank you. Okay. So Ms. Acacia Poirot is the chair of the Committee for Environmental Protection, CEP, a member of the New Zealand delegation to Hiroshima ATCM, the General Manager for Policy and Environment and Antarctica, New Zealand. So, penguins, everybody loves penguins. And Emperor penguins, as the Ambassador Uyama did identify at the very beginning of the meeting, that it was a high hope amongst the Japanese people and the media that penguins would be designated as the especially protected species. So this proposal was in WP 46, remember this one? And there were several scientific documents coming from SCAR, information paper IP 129, WP working paper 6, the information paper IP 29, and also from the IUCN IP 3. We are very glad to have a person from the IUCN in the audience today, so we can have that kind of discussions today. But again, we know the result, and so that maybe we can discuss on that point. But there are other achievements at the ATCM. I think we were able to adopt at least 2 resolutions by consensus coming from the advice of the CEP, if I do not make a mistake there. But maybe we can have some information on those. So one is on the non-native species and the wildlife diseases. This is based on WP 5, Working Paper 5, submitted by UK. The Hiroshima ATCM did adopt several measures on management plans for ASPAs and a resolution on revised site guidelines for visitors by consensus of all the consultative parties. At the same time, this is my view, they are a kind of a routine outcome of the ATCM based on the advice of the CEP, showing, of course, the continuing viability of the Antarctic environmental governance under the ATS. However, there have also been some criticism recently that CEP and ATCM could not obtain consensus on a more proactive, scientifically recommended tools and methods, such as I quote, prohibited zones as reference areas, geographically larger areas for ASPAs. And for the students, I would recommend you to go through working paper 10, submitted by Germany. This is a report on the intersessional dialogue between Germany and China on the proposed ASPA Otto von Gruber-Gebrege. I know there's a German delegation here, so she can correct me if the German pronunciation is wrong, but there is an information paper on that. So this ASPA was actually proposed 2 years ago, one year ago, and as you can see, from the report of the previous years, which are already public, it was China who had some hesitancy on that proposal, and so Germany and China have been consulting intersessionally bilaterally. And but what seems at the meeting was that there was no result coming out of it. So they continue the intersessional discussions between the two countries. So all in all, how do you see the achievements of the CEP at the Hiroshima, and maybe challenges? And of course, with regard to the challenges, we do have another session with you that we can talk a little bit more further, but maybe focusing on the achievements from the ATCM. Thank you, Keisha.
Thank you. I'm going to hold it back because it was quite loud. Thank you.
That's okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, Akiho, for inviting me to be on this panel and to talk at this symposium. And also just a general thanks to Japan for hosting the ATCM in its broader sense and making the world very welcome to come and visit your country, which is amazing so far. I guess given the first statement is what are the achievements, I'm actually feeling very positive about CEP 28, and maybe that's just me riding on a bit of a high. And why am I so positive about the outcomes from the CEP? And I guess the first place I start is in regards to reminding ourselves what the role of the committee is. And that is, we are a technical advisory body. And I've got the actual words here, which I always find useful to refer to my tatty protocol that I just didn't bring with me, to provide advice and formulate recommendations to the parties in connection with the implementation of the protocol, including the operation of its annexes, for consideration at the Antarctic Treaty Consultative Meetings. And then there are a number of bullet points which says what that should include. So effectiveness of the protocol, implementation of EIA procedures, minimizing and mitigating environmental impacts, procedures for environmental emergencies, operation and elaboration of the protected areas system, inspection procedures, state of the Antarctic environment, and the need for scientific research, including monitoring related to the implementation of the protocol. So when we look back over the last week or 2 weeks, the first thing I'll point out is that the CEP has done quite a bit of work lately to review its 5-year work plan. So there was a workshop held in 2023 in Helsinki, and then the revised 5-year work plan was agreed in Kochi in 2024. And then the committee looked at making sure that it aligned its agenda to this and the protocol, and so that was discussed and then agreed in Milan. And so for this meeting, this was the first time, and it's the first time I can remember in quite some time, and I'm not sure if others in the audience know, but it's the first time the agenda has actually been revised. And so I think that's just an example of where the committee is starting to become a little bit more dynamic and thinking more broadly. Just again, to remind ourselves that the committee works outside of these meetings, and so we work intersessionally to advance work, as Nils already said. And so we do that informally or formally or via these standing groups, of which there's 2, subsidiary group on management plans and the subsidiary group on climate change response. And my reflection over the past year was that the committee's been really busy. So we've got this intersessional forum that we work on, and there were quite a lot of work streams in there, and informal and formal. And when you actually then sort of look at the work intersessionally against what we sort of said we would do from CEP 27, there's been a lot of work done and a lot of papers brought to this meeting to advance those discussions. So I feel really positive that like there's so many people working on this stuff to continue the discussions. Then when I look at CEP 28 itself, well, the committee considered 40 working papers, and Nils mentioned working paper 55, which was the joint CEP SC-CAMLR workshop. So that was the last paper that got submitted to the Secretariat. So there's 55 working papers submitted to the ATCM and the CEP, 40 of which the committee discussed and formulated advice where needed. So that's a big workload that the committee did, and when you look at our agenda across 1 week, we only really do that in 3.5 days. So I think that's amazing for 42 members to be able to get through that workload, not mentioning also the 85 information papers, 5 Secretariat papers, and 13 background papers that were also considered by the committee. So I think that's actually pretty important, that the committee is able to, in a short period of time, develop a lot of work, discuss it all, formulate our advice, and agree and adopt a report, and then provide our advice to the ATCM. So that should be celebrated. I think also what I've seen over the last, I would say year, but probably longer, at least 5 years, the committee is continuing to evolve how it works. So Nils, I'll just call you out there, you held some online meetings and workshops to progress the subsidiary group on climate change response work, which there was a lot of acknowledgement for doing that quite differently. I think the committee has taken up a number of mentoring opportunities to sort of try and get more engagement from perhaps members which might not feel as confident or new people to the committee's work. There were focused workshops, and I'll call out the joint CEP SC-CAMLR workshop as a highlight. And then also committee members are actually calling for more breakout groups or time to sort of sit and debate and discuss as opposed to sort of sitting formally behind our flags. And then of course, I think I can't not acknowledge the substantial amount of work and input that our observers and technical experts provide to these meetings. It's outstanding, it's on point, and they nail it every year. And I just think that is a real amazing sort of relationship that we have that group of people, or the observers basically themselves, that are able to really support the committee's work. And when the committee works, I also think we work very collaboratively, and we have really good constructive engagement. And that is over, like the protocol will be celebrating its 35th anniversary, and I think the committee has achieved a lot in that time, which segue to next, like tomorrow, or tomorrow's session, so I'll be quiet on that. So if I just rattle through the agenda and some of the things that we talked about for folks who weren't present, I think the committee usually starts with hearing updates or advice from our observers. So this is the Scientific Committee of Antarctic Research, the Scientific Committee of CAMLR, COMNEP, ASOC, IATO, WMO, and IUCN. And as a chair, I always like to have that agenda item really early on in the week, because I think they set the tone, and that is exactly what happened at this meeting. There was the flavor that sort of spread across the rest of the discussions was, as again, Nils, we're going to be repeating each other here. That the Antarctic is just undergoing a rapid change, and you can see across the agenda that climate change is starting to be peppered across the different agenda items. When I talked about the functions of the committee, one of the things we're supposed to be doing is advising on the science needed, and the committee first of all started off with its first working paper looking at whether or not the committee agreed to sort of facilitate or initiate a process to review and track progress of the CEP's list of science knowledge and information needs. So thinking back, we've first of all reviewed a 5-year work plan, we've updated our agenda, and now we kind of need to go, well, what science do we need to sort of progress our work? And the committee all agreed that this is very timely and very important, and that information should be available for science funders globally to be able to inform the science that would really help the policy audience. The agenda is mapped more or less against our annexes, which is again a function of the committee to be reporting on the implementation of the annexes. And the Annex 1 of the protocol is environmental impact assessments, and every year new ideas and thoughts and ways of improving the system are brought to the committee. And the 3 papers that were discussed, working paper 38, initial environmental reference state to inform the environmental impact assessment, was agreed, and that information was updated. Working paper 40, cumulative impacts assessment and the outcomes from an informal intersessional work to continue to talk about this, and we know that that was added as a joint priority area with SC-CAMLR. And then also we had another paper which, off the back of an independent review of New Zealand's Scott-based redevelopment project, how can we provide more information on Article 8.3 of the protocol for folks who have a change in an activity that might require a new environmental impact assessment. Picking up on your topics, we moved on to sort of Annex 2 issues, which was around non-native species and wildlife disease. I found the range of papers under this agenda item very, very interesting. There was naturally just a couple of clusters. So there was a cluster around how national programs or members or countries are addressing the impacts of avian influenza. There was another sort of cluster around non-native species and introductions, particularly on King George Island, and the collaboration that countries that operate there are going through towards monitoring, surveillance, and hopefully eradication of a couple of species which have managed to establish in the Antarctic environment. And then a couple of other interesting ones around ballast water, biofouling, and interestingly, the potential for rabies to be transmitted to Antarctic wildlife through a particular seal in Africa. So as you noted, work intersessionally was undertaken to update, review and update the committee's advice just around non-native species and to actually consider all of this great piece of work that's going on in regards to wildlife disease. So I would see that as like quite a bit of progress, noting that countries are collaborating to minimize the introduction, to surveil and try and eradicate species that are established, and to identify emerging issues such as rabies or wildlife disease. So very positive. Also under Annex 2, and I'm probably going to run out of time, I'm over time, aren't I? Emperor penguins, yeah. I think we all know that, and I guess my personal opinion is the committee and our expert advisor, SCAR, have responded to all of the information that has been requested or the gaps, and we still can't seem to find a way forward on that. But I don't think it's the committee's job to find consensus, and so the committee have done what they need to do, and they've discussed it and have formulated some advice to the treaty parties. And there is just still a divide on the best way forward there. My personal reflection is that we have made quite a few leaps and bounds in being able to talk more openly and think of other ways of addressing this issue, if not through specially protected species designation. We talked about a number of other things, which I think Akiho, you mentioned were sort of just our normal kind of pieces of work. So Annex 3, 4, and 5, so waste management, marine prevention and pollution, and protected area system. A number of protected areas have gone through their 5-year review. This year, I think it was really great to see 3 new protected areas, which is a really positive thing that we are still addressing the effectiveness and representativeness of the protected area system. I'm running out of time. The other thing I wanted to just point out, because I'll skip over climate change, was around environmental monitoring. We had a really good discussion about how to eat the elephant one bite at a time. Lots of metaphors with regards to elephants and which part to start eating first. But again, another really good example of like progressing a topic, and let's not forget that we haven't been able to solve this one in 30 years. So this meeting wasn't going to do that, but we've had a really good discussion and are starting to chip away at the elephant. And so I guess that's me out of time, but I just did want to sort of point out 1 or 2 challenges that I think this meeting is starting to show is the whole concept around keeping up pace, and we, like I said, we'd heard this, the Antarctic environment is changing rapidly. Can we make decisions that are evidence-based? Engagement, which just requires resourcing people time and money, and everybody's busy globally, and as well as the pressing need for organizations and governments outside of Antarctica to recognize what's happening there and to make rapid changes to decarbonize. So hopefully that's hit the brief. Feeling very positive, even though we have some challenges. We've done a really good job, so we as a committee can pat ourselves on the back. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. But yes, I think we'll come back to your positive note and maybe my little bit of opposite type. Of course, it's more from the Ambassador Uyama's press conference, but let's see that in the discussions afterwards. Okay, so then we have a good friend, can I say, Professor Dr. René Lefeber, Chair of the Special Working Group 3 on the Antarctic Tourism Framework, a member of the Dutch delegation to Hiroshima ATCM, legal advisor and head of the International Law Division of the Netherlands Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and professor of International Environmental Law at the University of Amsterdam, the Netherlands. So, as Ambassador Uyama has identified, the discussions on the framework was an important agenda for the Hiroshima ATCM. And the intersessional work before the Hiroshima was summarized in working paper 30, WP 30, submitted by the Netherlands, and it summarizes the report of the ICG on framework, on comprehensive and consistent framework. This approach, this term is actually agreed approach. At the same time, we have heard some delegations referring to a term stepwise approach, for example, focusing, for example, on monitoring, on relatively new and growing activities such as deep field or airborne tourism. So, and also we also know this is from information paper 198. IP 198, the complexities of addressing the Antarctic tourism in a comprehensive manner. So it is a complex matter. So René is trying to work out the discussions on these complex issues. And also, I noticed a very interesting negotiation process, innovative techniques, and he's very good at it. And I do remember from 2010, Nagoya Kuala Lumpur Supplementary Environmental Protocol and the annex, he invented this term, I think was a core element paper. I think that was his invention. And it seems like he has, again, having some unique terms like building blocks, work streams, and the chair's synthesis paper, and of course, how effectively and inclusively the intersessional work would be conducted, and how that intersessional work be reflected when the delegates come to the meetings at this time and at the Hiroshima. That was also an issue with regard to the negotiation process. So maybe for the audience who may not know all those details of the discussions under your working group 3, it might be good that we have some reports from you in a kind of a how do you say, simple words, but still both the substance and also the negotiation process, and also maybe if you can touch upon a possible future on having a framework into the future. So thank you, René.
Thank you, Akiho. Thank you so much for inviting me to this symposium, and indeed also thanks to Japan for hosting the ATCM. I think that was a very special experience to be in Hiroshima for the ATCM. And I think Japan was very successful in linking the continent of peace to the city of peace. And that was a very special experience. One that we from the Netherlands hope to build on 2 years from now, when the Netherlands will be hosting the ATCM in The Hague, the city of peace and justice.
Okay.
But you led the way for us in that respect.
Is this for the first time that you announced it? The name? The Hague?
The Hague maybe for the first
wow,
time.
Thank you.
I think it's not meant to be a secret necessarily, okay. And the contracts still have to be finalized, but I think it's the only game in town. So it is going to be The Hague, the city of peace and justice. The chair of the meeting asked me before the end of the meeting whether there were any tangible results from Special Working Group 3 on tourism. And I said, no. There are no tangible results, or it must be the request for advice from the CEP on monitoring. But also I said that was not to be expected, because this is clearly work in progress. So the next question was, well, is it a waste of time? No, it was not a waste of time. I think we did make progress in Hiroshima towards the framework, even though it's going to be a long time before we get there. It's not next year. It's probably also not 2 years from now in The Hague. And that is what it is. There are so many resolutions and measures already in place on tourism that it is very difficult to get a comprehensive understanding of everything that's already in place and where we need to advance the regulatory framework. I think we have been successful in that 2 years ago when we adopted a decision in Kochi with an annex setting out the building blocks for the framework. That was a very good and useful exercise. At the same time, following the adoption of the building blocks, it's where do we start? Because it was and is a daunting prospect to develop all the issues that are listed in the annex to the decision. And you were asking me about the process and other processes. And the idea of building blocks I used before as a co-chair of a contact group in 2006 on access and benefit sharing under the Convention on Biological Diversity, which eventually led to the adoption of the Nagoya Protocol on access and benefit sharing. And there it was also very difficult to find that starting point for the negotiations. And there were delegates from all around the world, so it's not an Antarctic Treaty consultative meeting where you have a limited number of states, which tends to be a friendly environment and not a cutthroat environment as UN processes are. So it's very different, and it was very difficult to get an agreement on that starting point. And we distinguished then between building blocks that were elements that had to go into the treaty, we were working towards the treaty, that everybody agreed on, and then there were divergences of views on other issues whether they should or should not be included in the treaty, and we called those bullets. And that was agreed. And that was then the basis to go forward. I do remember very well the Colombian delegate coming to me after we had agreed to that, and she said, the bullets are going to kill us. And that was very aptly put, because she had concerns about some of those bullets, in particular relating to access. So I was very happy to avoid the bullets in the Annex to Decision 5/2024 that by which we agreed to building blocks, and that we have only building blocks, but we have quite a few of them that we need to develop. What we did at this meeting is first we came out of a very successful intersessional period. I have led intersessional contact groups before in the ATCM 10, 15 years ago. That was not easy. That was just trying to get a discussion going intersessionally. People had other things on their mind. It was very difficult to get them involved. Very difficult then, I mean, even when you have provocative questions, they still would not respond in the forum, and they would, let alone that we could organize workshops. I don't think we had workshops at the time. This intersessional contact group, and it's the second year in succession, but last year we had 4 virtual workshops plus 1 on monitoring in a work stream. And I'm really pleasantly surprised and amazed by the level of engagement. It's not full participation, but it's broad participation. We have hundreds of views, we have on the forum, we have dozens of replies to posts, and we had 40 to 60 participants in each of the workshops. And even one that we started at 10 p.m. Central European time to accommodate New Zealand, who were active in that particular work stream and who most of the time had to join in the middle of the night if they wanted to join. Because it's very difficult to organize virtual work streams with all the different time zones involved. There is no good time. So given that, 40 to 60 participants is quite a good result. And also, so we started with those building blocks, the elements that should go into the framework 2 years ago. And then last year, because it was so daunting, we didn't know where to start, we came up with the concept of work streams. Now, several delegations were quite skeptical that we would have work streams which would identify particular issues. So the first, we have the building blocks, and the most important building blocks are the first two: managing growth and managing diversification of tourism. Managing growth, then, well, the work stream would focus on the spatial approaches within that work stream, and then the second work stream on managing diversification would focus on assessment of activities, and then we would focus on monitoring in a third work stream. And then we had a work stream on institutional approaches of institutional governance issues and practicalities. And that was a way in order to highlight some of the issues from the building blocks to get the work going. And that worked. So we got the work going, and in spite of this skepticism, we ended up with a working paper and 2 information papers going into this ATCM that provided a basis for the way forward. And on that basis, I circulated a document which was called a synthesis document, where I brought the work streams and the building blocks together. And I could only hope that that would be accepted as the basis for the negotiations. I think it has been accepted in practice, but not formally yet. But what we brought there was, in that synthesis document, what I had coming to the meeting was only something on managing growth and something on monitoring, not on managing diversification, and not on any of the other issues. And we're coming out of the meeting with a synthesis document that has also the assessment of activities in the framework of managing diversification, included in Australia, Phil in particular, together with his colleague from Rita, turned that over in a couple of days, and I thought that would take you until the end of the meeting, and I was very much surprised to see that within a few days we had that in the synthesis document as well, and then New Zealand and Argentina produced bullets for fees. So actually, at the beginning of the meeting, I thought, oh, we're going fast, but then what happens often with negotiations, 2 steps forward, 1 step back, and coming Saturday and Monday, there was a bit of backtracking, and the synthesis document was welcomed, but could not be accepted as the basis of the negotiations formally, but I think in practice it will be. Yeah, I think I'll leave it here at this point for now, and then hopefully we can continue the discussion.
Thank you very much. It's very interesting. Very interesting that you have this grand design of how to negotiate. I like that. Thank you. Okay, so we have Dr. Chul Shin, President of Korea Polar Research Institute, (KOPRI), a member of the Korean delegation to Hiroshima ATCM, and he's not the chair of the working group, but I asked him as maybe the KOPRI team to report on the achievements of working group 2. This is science and operational matters. So tourism is for the René's responsibility. We had several interesting papers and also discussions, and I think achievements, and I will just go through some of them. But so we had a very interesting paper from the United States on inspection. This is IP17. Please go through that. And a good example through this inspection regime and international cooperation on the ground by the inspectors and the inspected stations. We also had a very good discussion and achievement on digital data repository. This is based on working paper 13 Rev 2 by Spain, on digital data repository, culminating in the consensus adoption of a resolution on establishment of national digital repository. I have to confess I don't know the details of the content of it, but there is a resolution that adopted. And also, even in the working group 2, we had a very robust discussions on the implications of climate change on science and logistics. For example, working paper 3 by the United Kingdom, and but we also had some divergent views on how the ATCM discussion on climate change would have positive and constructive input in the United Nations forums, such as UNFCCC. So this would be a very interesting theme for some of the students, these interactions between ATS and the other fora, including the climate change fora. Of course, the main one is the UNFCCC. And in this context, we have received the IP information paper 94 by Turkey. The Turkey is actually hosting the COP, UNFCCC COP 31, and Turkey has submitted a paper connecting Antarctica to COP 31 of the UNFCCC. So there are some issues discussed. This interrelationship between mostly based on the science, but between climate change through climate change between the ATCM and the UN forums. I think we also had a very good discussions on how the Antarctic governance can support science and scientific cooperation towards the IPY5, International Polar Year number 5, which is coming in 2032 to 2033. So we have an IP 168 submitted by SCAR, highlighting this preparation for their 5th IPY. So on that, maybe I can ask Chul to reflect on some of the achievements on science and logistical issues from the Hiroshima ATCM. Thank you.
Thank you. When you look at the panelists and the audience, I'm amazed at what a booking power you have.
Booking power, okay. Booking power, okay.
Networking skill. And I'm happy to be part of it. WG has been in existence over a number of years. It has to do with anything that is not legal, not institutional. So that used to span over science, operation, tourism, and non-governmental activities. I think it is fair to say WG3 is actually a spin-off from WG2. Let me begin with some rather light personal observations of this year's WG2. Highly pathogenic avian influenza. This is scientifically intriguing and management-wise necessary and critical. And when it becomes what to do, well, when it is a matter of what to do, operationally very challenging. And we have had many reports, and China, Chile, Ecuador, and now it is produced COMNAP. It has led to COMNAP issuing regular updates and SCAR producing a database. So in a few years' time, how this HPAI issue is dealt with is something I'm observing with great deal of interest. And also infrastructure modernization, and then it's not just an increase in accepting capacity, but it's about more environmental friendly and clean energy. Example of Chile and China again. So this is something you wouldn't think of, let's say, 10 years back and 20 years back. And then coming back on the important papers mentioned by Akiho, inspection. What do you think of inspection? When you hear a word, what do you think? When you hear a word like inspection? Nuclear inspection? So inspection is starting with suspicion. So after the inspection, you would say, okay, doubt is cleared or suspicion is cleared. But in the Antarctic, inspection is, for me, it's to show Antarctic Treaty is well upheld and well adhered to. That's very important. And secondly, even though you come to us at a very short notice, like just last night, then I have nothing to show, I have nothing to hide. I can show you just as what it is, as how we are. So for the sake of treaty adherence, compliance, and for the sake of openness, inspection is a very important mechanism. And then this particular US inspection this year, just past season, it was on last month, Hills, Antarctica. When you look at the records, this is very poorly inspected region. And the first one was actually Australia, 2010. It was not on ground, on site, but flying inspection. And in 16 years' time, and US did the second inspection. It was on ground, on site inspection. And when you look at the report, it just shows how important this region is and how cooperation is done. So, and then going a little further from there, maybe it's time we can do inspections in more collaborative manner and in more future-oriented methods and fashions. And second, digital data or repository. And I note that this resulted in consensus adoption of resolution, which is a great news these days in the Antarctic Treaty Consultative Meeting. And for me, digital data, well, having and running a digital data repository is you hand over something to the future generations in a more reliable and more convincing way. And thirdly, climate change WP3 by UK, but there was other paper like by COMLAB, climate change and infrastructure, and also there was climate change update by SCAR. I think we can look at the three papers together. Of course, as Akiho mentioned, we're not agreeing on everything. For example, a certain country is not happy with climate change discussed at an ATCM forum, but nonetheless, it's almost our obligation to have the Antarctic insights highlighted in more global settings. So it's not just having Antarctic connected to the global discussion, but having more substantial contribution and have the Antarctic and polar element reflected as it deserves. And then IPY and potential interface with governance. I may add Antarctica in sync as well. So this kind of activity doesn't happen that often. For example, IPY used to take place every 50 years, but now it's in 25 years. I think it's a kind of statement that climate change is taking place quite rapidly. So now, this year's WG2, it was like a promotional or planning, introduction of the plans, but as years go by, and the issue will be something like how we can utilize this large-scale international science campaigns. It just doesn't end up as science, but it actually works to answer very important questions, management-wise and conservation-wise, whatever the topics are, in order to uphold the Antarctic Treaty System. I think I will stop here.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that summary. Okay, let me just check the. All right, Dr. Indi Hodgson-Johnston. I'm sorry because I'm calling her always Indi. It didn't come the last name. The senior lecturer in Marine and Antarctic Governance, University of Tasmania, Australia. The chief rapporteur of Hiroshima ATCM. I think Ambassador Uyama also touched upon during the second press conference that Secretariat, because of the hard work all the rapporteurs have done, is trying to produce the preliminary reports in 4 official languages much faster than before, and hopefully within a little bit more than 1 month. I think he said that in the press conference. So the world is actually waiting for that. So that means a lot of work for you. But she's head of the chief rapporteur of the Hiroshima, and so these final reports are very important for us and for the academia to reflect on what has been discussed and what has been actually agreed to put into the reports. And especially when the academia talks about on Antarctic governance, we try to base our analysis on the reports because it is an agreed. There's only once that there was no agreement, but it is an agreed text in a way. So the reports is very important. So I would encourage all the students to actually read carefully, very, very carefully, because they negotiate a lot on specific terms and there. So please look at the final reports very carefully. But anyway, so she is going to report on working group 1 on policy, legal, and institutional matters. And so maybe just to give the audience a little bit background and what are the issues that have been discussed in the working group 1. One is, again, what the Ambassador Uyama has emphasized is the transparency. And so there are two aspects to the transparency. The first aspect of the transparency is the transparency of the meetings, ATCM and CEPs. And on this one, there was a discussion based on the working paper 27 by Australia, this time focusing more on the faster public release of ATCM and CEP reports. So again, because of that discussions, hopefully the reports will come faster than normal. So that's good. And also on this aspect of transparency of the meetings, Japanese host government initiated this press conferences at the start, at the end of the ATCM. I think it's a good way to have some information from inside towards the public. The second aspect of transparency is the transparency of the Antarctic activities. And the Japanese host government had it as one of the 4 main agenda items of Hiroshima ATCM. So this is the transparency of the Antarctic activities. And on this one, we had the IP 130 by the United States on military personnel and facilities transparency requirements. So this is IP 130, submitted by United States. And the other one is the working paper 28, submitted by Spain on the improvements of the EIES, Electric Information Exchange System. And followed by robust discussions confirming the importance of the transparency of Antarctic activities and of the effective use of governance tools, such as information exchange and inspection, to ensure such transparency. So initiative was taken to draft a resolution on transparency, and the result you will see from the report is a resolution on information exchange. The other issue, of course, was the consultative party status. And as you have heard during the press conference by the Ambassador Uyama, all 3 requests have not been accepted, had a consensus to allow the 3 contracting parties to the Antarctic Treaty to become a consultative party because of the objections from other consultative parties. I will not go into details to that, but so that did happen at the ATCM. And interestingly, during the Hiroshima, we had a very good discussions on effectiveness and efficiency of ATCM CP meetings. And the documents was submitted by Argentina. This is working paper 18, and the decision was adopted. This might be an interesting issue for the discussions because this paper tries to, streamline including the intersessional consultations, and in a way, how to be more effective and more inclusive for the intersessional contact groups. And of course, René mentioned on the tourism intersessional contact groups, the participation was pretty wide. So it seems like it was effective. But there are certain voices that sometimes for some countries it's very difficult to participate in the intersessional contact group. So there was a proposal and also a decision to streamline those intersessional contact groups or intersessional negotiations. On the peaceful use, there was no specific papers or maybe specific discussions on peace itself. But there was a discussion raised during the ATCM regarding this incident of MV Bandaro. This is the, of course, I will not go into the details. So MV Vandaro waging a war on krill. So the term war appears probably in the final report against a Norwegian fishing vessel in the Southern Ocean. So we have that incident being reported during the ATCM. On Annex 6, this is on environmental liability. Japan submitted information paper IP97, introducing its progress on amending its domestic law to implement the Annex 6 and its imminent approval of Annex 6 itself. So the question is how Japan is proactively reaching out to the remaining 8 consultative parties that are necessary for this Annex 6 to become effective. So with that, Indi, please have your reflection on many of the issues that were discussed in Working Group 1. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Akiho. Thank you for having me along. Sorry if I sound a bit croaky and tired. It's because I am. Yeah, I mean, those are huge issues, right? They're cross-cutting issues that are across probably most of what people have said on the panel already. Yeah, transparency. Transparency came up quite a few times, not just in relation to, Working Paper 27, which was the Australian paper on the meetings, but also in terms of Working Paper 28, which was activities and transparency of sort of disclosure of what you're doing in Antarctica. So there's definitely 2 big threads. So the Australian paper on trying to get the report released a lot earlier than what it is. I must say that, and I'm not being defensive at all, it is a lot earlier than it used to be. But it is released in a preliminary form in English, and that's, we've got 4 official languages of the Antarctic Treaty, and the fact that it is released most early in English, that is the operative language of the meetings and things like that, so I understand. There's a lot of work that goes into translating 800 paragraphs, I think we adopted this year. That's a lot to get technically correct. We actually had quite a few discussions about those translations across and how the consistency across there, so they all mean the same thing. It is a lot of work, so while I'm not pushing back on then wanting to push that out, maybe put a pin in that, because I'll mention that in terms of new technologies and maybe how they can help. And the communique of the host country secretariat, how that can provide greater transparency in that probably interim period between the meeting ending, as in yesterday, and hopefully soon with the preliminary reports. And yeah, those decisions that were made to move forward and the secretariat to work out what they can do. They are a small team based in Buenos Aires, not a huge amount of resources. So trying to work out how those things would work is something that's ongoing. It isn't something you can just agree on the floor and do. In terms of information exchange, there's a lot about that. It's interesting in this world of huge amounts of data. I guess, for me, an achievement would be there was some recognition that it needs to be not just automated data that just pumps out, that sort of does that sort of thing. It actually needs to be meaningful activity reporting, which I found really cool. Advance notice, all those sorts of things of activities, incredibly important. But I guess one of the achievements looking back is that transparency really is on the agenda, right? Even if we don't have one that says transparency, it's really something that pops itself up quite often. So I think that's good. Consultative party status is probably not what I would call an achievement. That was in plenary, lots of IPs to do with that. Just have a look at those. It was Canada and Belarus probably re-prosecuting their case over and over, and Turkey's new application. I mean, that's obviously bogged down in geopolitics and things like that. But what was interesting was that there was more nuance around the Article 9.2 and the criteria in Decision 2, 2017, about perhaps that transparency thread again. What decisions are being made and how as to preventing the applications from going through and being successful. Perhaps more articulation of that, perhaps the need to articulate on those criteria why the status isn't going, because I mean, it's 4 or 5 years now that it's been re-prosecuted over and over again. That's not good use of anyone's time, particularly for Canada and Belarus, who keep having to make these applications. So yeah, and I don't think that's healthy for the system. So I think that's an area that's possibly not an achievement for this year. Effectiveness and efficiency. I like efficiency, and some of the processes need to be more efficient. I say that having sat through many conversations about how AI is probably going to take our jobs as rapporteurs. And I always read in the newspaper and going, AI is coming for your job, and I just didn't quite think it'd be so soon. But here we are. Look, it's definitely an incredible technology. In the agreement that was moving forward from Working Paper 18 from Argentina, the use of AI is going to be looked at. Okay, so it's not something that is going to instantly replace my amazing team or anything like that. I think we need to look at that more clearly. That was definitely something that came up. And I think at the heart of that is that the procedural transparency. How did we get to the text that was agreed? All those sorts of things. And at the end of the day, anything that my team writes has to be adopted by the parties, okay? So it's not just something Indi just made up, those kinds of things. It needs to be an accurate reflection. And how did that come about, and what problems will that cause, and security of data, all those sorts of things. So I think there just needs to be, I like the sensible approach to what they're doing. It is new technology, it has a lot of promise, it has a lot of things that can make it more efficient and quicker. Maybe I could get to bed before 2 a.m, that would be great. But what are the cautions that we need to do here? Peaceful use was interesting. It kind of wasn't really, I think for me it's kind of a newish world where the Antarctic Treaty parties will need to look at the role of non-state actors and peace. I think that's a really interesting angle. So what happened was, this is in reference to the MV Bandero, which is a Paul Watson Foundation vessel, which collided with a krill fishing vessel fishing in CAMLR area. Now, it's incredibly complex in terms of the registration of the vessel. It's a complex thing in the registration of the charity that runs it. It's all very multinational. It's all very confusing. But what does that have? We have Starlinks, we have all sorts of non-state actors involved in lots of things at the moment. How will the treaties parties in the future look towards that role of peace and the actions of these sorts of actors? I just think there's something kind of popped up, and it did promote a bit of discussion. Liability, I mean, I'm probably not going to talk too much about liability. I think Ville's going to talk about that in his presentation in a future, and I must admit, I did read the program, but it's gone in one ear out the other. But look, I think it's incredibly complicated legislation, and I think Japan should be congratulated for trying to get it through a complicated bit of annex into a complicated domestic legal system. I think that's fantastic that they've done it. 8 consultative parties left. Yes, it's difficult. Look, education and outreach was on my list, but I think there are probably better people in the room, much more interested and invested in that than I was. It had an amazing second workshop on the first day of the meeting this year. I was there in the first workshop 10 years ago. I think it's really important soft power. So, but I'll probably leave it at that.
Good, thank you. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much. And so I know if I just open the floor, we would expect that good questions coming from the floor. But may I maybe just go over the panelists, how you thought of the others, and or maybe some like common issues coming out from the all of the working groups, and we tried to focus in this symposium how to improve the governance of the Antarctic Treaty System. It could be environmental governance, it could be peace, tourism, but again, how we can strengthen the governance system to promote such a specific issues, environmental protection, tourism management, keeping peace in Antarctica, promoting international cooperation in scientific research and logistics. I think that's the kind of common theme that I try to build upon from all the sessions during this symposium. All right, I don't have any particular question, if you're expecting one, but yes, René has one. Thank you.
Thank you, Akiho. Maybe not so much a question as an issue for further discussion. I appreciate so much that you put, that Japan put, but also you yourself, put transparency on the agenda. I think transparency is very important, and you see in other negotiations that they are fully transparent, in particular environmental negotiations. With the presence, for example, with Earth Negotiations Bulletin from the International Institute for Sustainable Development, and they're doing an excellent job in reporting on the negotiations, basically providing the travaux préparatoires. But I think that, and you raised that as well, and it's related to the report. We need the report of the ATCM to be so elaborate in order to convey what actually happened at the meeting. We are spending 2 days on the report. 2 whole days of a 10 days meeting, or actually a 9 days meeting. That's a lot of time. I have chaired quite a few meetings. The report, sometimes I manage to just to get it through in 5 minutes or less. And those are the exceptions to the rule, but within 1 or 2 hours, yes, can be done. But then it should be much shorter. I mean, I'm sorry for your job, but I think it can be shorter if the meeting would be more transparent. But the meeting is not transparent, so it cannot be short, because I see the added value of the report as it is now, because we don't have a transparent meeting. So, do you see that in the same terms or differently? It's a question for you, because you have been so active in this year on putting this on the agenda.
Thank you, René. Of course, in front of the registration, you had this Antarctic Governance White Paper series, which is under this program, and we have one paper on transparency. So please go through that. Of course, I have several views on that, but of course, I think we would like to have a little bit more general discussions. Maybe I can pose it like this to both Nils and Ceisha. You know, René and I, we've been involved in multilateral treaty negotiations for the global environment, climate change and the biodiversity. I have no problem opening it up because it is a global environmental treaties. So it's very open, and you know, a lot of media comes in. And of course, the reports are still long, but still, we have that kind of a lot of public entities coming into the meetings themselves. So for the environmental issues within the ATS, it could be that we could have more public or transparency, meaning that participation or media coverage of the CEP discussions compared to the other part of the Antarctic Treaty System, which relates to peace. And of course, we rarely talk about nuclear explosion in Antarctica, but it is a security issue. And usually they are done in other forums also in a confidential way. So we have like two different types of issues that discussed in the ATCM. One, I do agree that it should be more open, but the others are probably more comfortable for the other parties to have it within the smaller group, or confidentiality would be more important than the others. Do you agree this kind of a distinction between environmental issues like Ceisha and Nils? It could be more open to the public with media access. What do you think? Sorry.
Yeah. My personal opinion is no, I don't see any reasons, personal opinions, yeah. I don't see any reasons why the environmental piece couldn't be opened up. And why do I say that? Because I see us as a technical advisory body that is just providing advice. And I would like to think that we're non-political because of that technical nature. And so working with our observers and experts, having good discussions to formulate our advice, noting we don't need to reach consensus. Then outside of those meetings, personal conversations have sort of said, well, you haven't achieved anything. But with that, you're not seeing all the work that's gone on, as I tried to sort of outline in my my reflections. Was there's so much work going on, and there's a lot of success, and there's a lot of progress. And when we don't see progress on some issues, and there are reasons for that, then we potentially form a negative opinion, when actually I think the committee is doing a really, really good job. So that's my personal view.
Yeah, I actually generally agree. I would like to, and it's maybe a more general question, put a question back to people who have attended other, well, to actual bigger meetings. The question would be, does the more, let's say, closed nature of this meeting allow for more open discussions on the floor in comparison with other meetings which are more transparent and where there's more insight on what people, because I think that is one of the reasons why people would say, let's keep this in general a bit more close with less media access and to allow more open discussions on the floor. Those who have experience, Akiho, would you agree that is, I'm sorry to answer a question with a question, but I don't have much experience myself with other fora, but I think it's interesting if that argument actually makes sense. If it makes sense, if people feel like they're able to more openly bring topics to the floor because there is less direct media coverage, or whether that is actually, in your experience, not the case.
What happens in those meetings is that there is a general debate first, and that's in a transparent setting. But when it comes to the crunch time, when decisions have to be made, there's always the option to close the meetings for observers and to limit it to the parties. So then contact groups are being set up, or friends of the chair groups are being set up and to negotiate the final outcomes. But you have the general debate and the presentation of at least initial positions in a transparent setting. And in particular for Antarctica, I'm not sure whether I agree with the distinction you made. I understand why you're making it, and I think it is highly relevant. I mean, you can distinguish between environmental issues or advisory functions and highly sensitive issues such as requests for consultative status. And I perfectly understand that such discussions, possibly after an initial presentation of views, is behind closed doors. But the Antarctic Treaty consultative parties according to the treaty, are managing Antarctica, are governing Antarctica on behalf of mankind. So you cannot do that behind closed doors. Personal view, but I think the view of the Netherlands as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Any views, maybe from science or logistics? Do you know, for example, the Japanese delegation, we have also scientists, and they seems to be feeling a little bit uncomfortable coming to this kind of a political fora, and the science and logistics are discussed in this kind of fora. So they are more comfortable going to the SCAR or common up meetings and discuss among the scientists, probably more open way. But what do you think, Yoon-sho? Do you think on science or international cooperation on science and logistics during the ATCM, do you think there can be more open up and having a more audience, interested scientists or maybe early career scholars listening to it? What do you think?
My first reaction would be, why not? Nonetheless, for me, transparency is multiple things like open, accessible, visible. So it's a mixture of just about everything. But whether science or policy, I think to me the key is having the outcome explainable and having the participants accountable later. So, well, there may be some cases immediate live broadcast, real-time TV show type of thing does make sense, but having the discussion, having the deliberation well recorded, and so that it is left on the archive, so that there is lessons to learn. I think for me that is the important thing.
Interesting. Indi, what do you think? Being a rapporteur, would you like the reports to be shorter without all those discussions over the 2 days? Yes, it's
Yes.
very, very frustrating at the end, but what do you think? Yes.
Yeah, and look, some of these ideas were put forward in, what was it, working paper 18, I think, where some suggestions about shortening the language. We do talk to the students. The way it's structured is that there's an introduction to the paper. They're often really long and often lots of interventions about them, right? And do we need that? Can we just have a link to the paper that they're presenting? Can we just do that? And then just capture the discussion in a shorter way? I'm definitely open to that. And I think that would save time. I think just stricter rules on introduction of the different papers, information papers, all those sorts of things, would be good. We did have a recent introduction where we'd have the summaries of all the information papers, even if they weren't actually presented on the floor. They used to just be a dot point. Now there's actually... So it just introduces this volume, which adds time, which, again, like René said, it takes a really long time to adopt 800 paragraphs over the two big reports. So I think there's definitely efficiencies, and I like the fact, and I think we can call it an achievement, is that they're trying to move forward with building in what these efficiencies might be, so that the discussion can be more about the discussion and more time spent trying to prosecute what we need to and things like that. So yeah, definitely ways to do that.
Thank you. So, any comments or questions, not only on the transparency that we've been discussing, but any of the issues that the panelists have touched upon, which is actually very broad. So we've actually reported on almost all aspects of the ATCM at the Hiroshima. But yes, so we have a Bill. Do you have any? So Sanjay and the Catherine there. And also Miao Miao. Okay, so maybe and Katie. So we'll try to take the questions first and have it maybe discuss it, including after the sessions, the other sessions. So Bill, Katie, Miao Miao, Sanjay and Catherine. So, please, thank you.
Hello there. Bill Muntean from the United States. Thank you all to the panelists and to everybody here for organizing this event. Yes, the continuing tragedy of the emperor penguin is sad, but the IUCN also identified fur seals as also endangered. And I was curious if there was any conversation on that, including specifically whether the rather dormant Convention on the Conservation of Antarctic Seals would play any potential role in fulfilling the title of that particular convention. Thank you.
Thank you. That's good. Maybe Katie?
We are live. Hi, Katie Marks from Australia, echoing Bill's comments. Thank you very much for organising this. It's fabulous to be here. Just returning to the transparency discussion, it was fascinating to see this play out in so many different domains over the last 2 weeks. Based on what you're saying now, it strikes me that there's also a conversation to be had around knowledge translation. So even if we manage to get the 800 pages of report down to, or paragraphs, sorry, not pages, down a little bit, it's still necessarily technical information that's there. So if we want the broader community to not only have access to this information, but also to be able to understand it, care about it, act upon it, there's work to be done in terms of making it digestible to a broader audience. So who do you think has responsibility for that? Is that the Secretariat? Is it parties? Is it civil society? Is it the media? And do those mechanisms already exist, or do they need some strengthening? Thank you.
Hello,
just
everyone.
a minute. I'm
sorry.
Yes, thank you. Yes, I mean, just getting the interpreters finishing the translation. Thank you. Thank you, Miao. Yes.
Okay, thank you, Professor Akiho. I'm very excited to be here to participate in this symposium. And I am a PhD graduate from Macquarie University, and I did my PhD thesis in the title of Reforming the Antarctic Treaty System to Address Climate Change Governance Challenges. And I have 2 questions to Nils and 1 question to Ceisha. And okay, for Nils, I have watched the ATCM this year online, and I have this question which has been like in my mind for a few years throughout my research during my PhD. And the question is about, do we need special body or institutional arrangement for climate change governance? From your work experience, do you think developing that kind of body or institution is needed or necessary? And the second question is, do you think the mandate of the SC-CAMLR currently is too limited to address all the climate change discussions or issues? Because now it's more limited to facilitate the implementation of CCRWP. So I just want to know about your experience, your opinion on whether this mandate should be extended to conduct more climate-focused discussions independently or intersessionally, or what the SC-CAMLR could play a better role in climate change governance. And then the question for Madam Chair Ceisha. I'm very impressed by your chairing during the conference and how that could be run so efficiently and smoothly. That's impressive. And my question is, I have followed some research on the work on designation of penguins as ASPS in the previous years. So from your experience and your work this year, what do you think is the progress on this issue in the CEP? Is the science very established, and do we need to work to formulate an ICG to promote this issue, or to promote some tangible outcome on this? That's all my question. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Sanjay, thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm Sanjay Chaturvedi from South Asian University in Delhi. Over the past 5 decades and more, those of us who have observed the Antarctic Treaty governance, both sometimes on the floor of the ATCMs and also from our own studies and libraries, we have been struck from time to time by the silence on the part of quite a large number of Antarctic Treaty parties. And we wonder whether the increase in number has translated itself into a more participatory discussions at the Antarctic Treaty meeting. Now, the report, for very understandable reasons, talks about some states, most states, and it's very difficult for a scholar to really discern as to who said what, when, and why. So my question is that in different working groups, say over the last few years as the number has increased, have we seen more participation, or the participation has gone down? Because this itself will have a number of reasons for us to think through. Thank you.
Just a minute. Catherine, just a minute. Yep. Thank you very much. Okay, that was very interesting. I think we should take it up on board a little bit later on. Good, thank you. So, Catherine, yes, please, thank you.
Yes, I've got it. Thank you, Akiho. So mine actually wasn't a question, but I was responding more to the fact that Ceisha said she didn't get to talk about the penguins much, and we've had a couple of questions about that. But mine is a comment, and because I was there for the 2 weeks, and as part of our UCN involved in the preparation of, well, not really doing the papers themselves, but certainly involved in the discussions about it intersessionally. And I just, so if you want me to not talk now, because I see we're near the end and you want me to save it another time, I'm happy to do that, or I can just give a couple quick comments on.
Right.
I don't know what you'd rather.
This is like an exceptional session that we do have a little bit of flexibility because we can, start the dinner 6:30. However, we are also planning to have a group photo after this one, and the light is going down and down and down, and I don't know how much we can wait for that. So I hope it will be shorter, and I also would like to have just quick responses from the panelists also to whatever that you thought would be interesting for further discussions later on tomorrow. Thank you very much. So, Catherine, yes.
Sure. Okay, so it was mentioned, or Ceisha mentioned, that geopolitics played a role. And I just wanted to note that it's not only East-West, or the traditional geopolitics that are at play. We saw that with India blocking or not really agreeing to Turkey's admission as a consultative party. It's not just the normal standard geopolitics. And so the more a Japanese chair might push and state in your first media conference that it's the #1 priority, maybe the less likely it is that it might happen for other reasons. But I also think there's different cultures that are at play in terms of decision making. And we had, for example, in the process of the red listing through the IUCN, I guess it's devolved to BirdLife International via a contract for that red listing. They have an open process. They have a draft decision, an open process, call for comments, and the Chinese scientists didn't comment. It went ahead anyway. But there were some, some weren't happy about that lack of input. and working intercessionally, the way you make decisions with a little bit more respect for other cultures' way of deciding and inputting into these, not just a more Western scientific individualistic call for public comment. You know, there will be, I think the biggest challenge will be intercessional work and not just waiting for things to be done at a meeting. And a lot of people will recognise that has to be done in between. And there's also a lot more work needs to be done on the actions, not just a status. And this was stated in the floor. It's, you know, I'm not divulging any, you know, private conversations or anything like this, but there's going to need to be a lot more action taken or thought given to the other actions that can be done, not just a blanket status name. And I think that was made very clear, and we're going to be working on it. Thank you. Kia ora tātou.
Good. Thank you very much. Yes. So, who would like to take any points? Yes, Nils. Thank you.
Thank you for very interesting questions. Before moving on to the question specifically posed to me, I would like to pick up on Katie's point for a second, because over the last couple of days, a number of us have been receiving emails from concerned citizens on emperor penguins and so on. But these emails started coming in when we were adopting our report. So there's not only a need to knowledge translation in terms of what are the decisions we're taking, but also how does this process work? Because if people start sending mails the moment the report is being adopted, it's too late. So yes, I agree, there is a need for that. I think the education and outreach work that is being done has to integrate that. It's partly Secretariat that can do a job, but it's also, I think, up to the parties to inform their own public about this. I just wanted to pick up on that because it really struck me. I'm still getting mails now, but that's not working. There's nothing more that can be done at this stage. So I think, yeah, it's a very good point. To questions specifically, a special body or institutional arrangement, it's an interesting question. What I found working on the SC-CAMLR is that climate change is such a cross-cutting issue that it's tricky to if you want to make a special body dealing specifically with climate change, you bring everything in. And it's just you're talking about everything because everything touches on climate change and climate change touches on everything. And also I don't think at this point we have any specific instruments or tools in our toolbox that are specifically directed at climate change. We have ASPAS, which can be used for climate refugia. We have specially protected species status for different kinds of species that require protection because they're climate vulnerable. But there's no specific tools to climate change, as far as I know. Maybe someone will correct me here on the panel. But so the special body, it would be so cross-cutting that I at this point, first reflection, I think it's a very interesting question, and I would love to learn more about your research. But I don't see specific need for that. On the mandate of SC-CAMLR, I think when I prepared the session work, I tried to be a bit more open. I think we invite SCAR to give a talk at the start of our virtual meetings we have now on emerging issues as well, see how we can bring that to the CEP. I think our focus is on facilitating the implementation of CCRWP, but we do try to take a bit of a broad review and see if there's emerging issues which are not on the radar at this point, and that someone could bring to the attention of CC or of CEP. So I think that's very briefly it, but happy to talk more about it because those are really interesting questions.
Indeed, thank you.
Firstly, to Bill's question about CCAS and the convention, I don't think so. I don't think there's a role for the convention on the conservation of Antarctic seals, just to the way it was framed and the timing that it was created. I'd really like to look at it. So let's look at it. I don't think so. Off the top of my head, no. I can't think of how it could, but I'd really interested to have a look at that. And Sanjay, you're going to hate this response. It's more and less participation, I think, from my experience over the last 10 years or so. I think it really depends on the issue as to is there more participation and by who, and sometimes there's far less participation, and it really would, I think it would be thematic rather than on the whole, but something definitely to look into. Yeah, really, really interesting question. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other additional? Thank you, Ceisha.
The penguins. Little penguins. I was hoping we might avoid the penguins, and the penguins are kind of linked to the seals thing, if I can respond to that as well. I agree. I don't think so, and I haven't read the convention, partly because New Zealand hasn't implemented it, but I kind of felt like the protocol possibly superseded it in some ways with regards to this particular topic and issue. And in regards to climate change and climate vulnerable species, I think that the protocol could manage this in lieu of CCAS being a different tool. In regards to the specific question to me on specially protected species for the emperor penguin, in regard, the question was, do we need to formulate an ICG to sort of promote or find a tangible outcome? My guess is no, and I say that because I guess this is a 4+ years conversation, and the science seems to be there, and the request for more science or for an assessment and following our procedures has been met, and we still can't find an agreement. So I'm not sure an ICG would be the way to promote that way forward, and I wonder if there might be some higher level discussions that need to take place so that there's flexibility in these meetings to discuss a way forward. So I think it needs to sit at the political level, unfortunately, when I've just promoted the CEP as being non-political and technical in regards to environmental management and using our tools. So that would be my response to that.
Thank you. Any other points whether you might want to raise now? All right. Well, thank you very much. Of course, many of the issues raised will be again addressed during the other sessions, and I hope you will continue to engage. But thank you to all the panelists. I'm sure that you've been very, exhausted after almost 2 weeks of Hiroshima discussions and negotiations. And thank you very much for coming here and sharing your views in this opening plenary session. Thank you very much.